Again, my name is Liese Klien. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. I have a dojo here. I've had one for 10 years, and I'm actually scheduled to open my dojo, which has been closed since March 13th, tomorrow. So we're actually starting classes on Tuesday. So again, COVID is in the forefront of everyone's mind. I'm not sure how. I mean, I'm doing my best to make my dojo safe, but I really wanted to hear from some experts on how we're going to move forward as a community in this COVID era, in this pandemic era. So let me introduce our panelists. We'll start alphabetically with Marta and Crispens, MD. Can we put her up on screen, highlight her? Good morning, Marta.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So Dr. Crispens is currently a professor and director of the Division of Gynecologic Oncology at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where she's been in practice for almost 18 years. Her work includes surgery and chemotherapy for patients with gynecologic cancers, teaching medical students and residents, and conducting clinical research to develop better therapies for female cancers. Any views she expresses during this panel discussion are her own. She has trained in Aikido for approximately 16 years under Tom and Mary McIntyre Sensei at Nashville Aikikai. She currently holds the rank of Sandan and teaches one of the dojo's weekly introductory classes. Welcome, Marta. Thank you for coming.
Hello, thank you for having this. This is really great.
Great. Okay, next, Deena Drake, please put her on screen. Maybe if you could make it a little blurry. No, I'm just kidding. Deena and I have known each other a long, long time. So Deena Drake Sensei began training in Aikido in 1995 with Mike Flynn Shihan in Northern California. She joined the Kenshusei, or teacher training program, in 1997 and continued her training as an apprentice to TK Chiba Shihan and Mark Murashige Shihan in San Diego beginning in 2000. Drake Sensei graduated from the Kenshusei program in 2007 as a fully certified instructor. She holds the rank of 6th degree black belt and is a member of the board of directors for Barankai North America. In her professional life, Drake Sensei is a clinical nurse specialist and PhD in intensive care unit and emergency department at Scripps Mercy Hospital in Chula Vista, California, and she's also a specialist in palliative care. So welcome, Drake Sensei.
Thank you so much. And just to clarify, I'm actually at Sharp Chula Vista Medical Center now, although I do have still a lot of great colleagues at Scripps Chula Vista. And thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much.
And I'm just actually the younger version or the nursing version of Gina Zerilli.
Younger version. Josephine Philipson Fan Sensei runs the Long Island Aikikai in Long Island, New York with her husband, Adam Philipson. The Long Island Aikikai is one of the oldest Aikido schools in the continental United States under Chief Instructor Eddie Hagihara, one of the original founding members of the New York Aikikai. With degrees in business, psychology, Eastern philosophy, and applied health sciences, Fan Sensei focuses on improving the customer experience, content creation and marketing, and optimizing the operations and finance portions of running a successful small businesses, including a dojo. Josephine logs these processes on dojoshow.com, a free resource hub for dojos looking to grow, which is an excellent, excellent site. So welcome, Josephine. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Everybody's like a doctor and I'm like, here, I'm like, oh, okay.
You're a doctor of business. All right, great. And last but certainly not least, Gina Zerilli Sensei. She started Aikido in 1975 at New York Aikikai with Yoshimitsu Yamada Sensei and started teaching in the dojo in 1979. She was promoted to 6th Dan in 2004 and holds the title of Shidoan, or Master Teacher. Zerilli Sensei travels the world to train with Yamada and Sagano Sensei of New York Aikikai, and also with Tamura Sensei of France, along with taking ukemi for every Japanese Shihan known to man, including Kanai Sensei, Chiba Sensei, Shibata Sensei, and woman, and other top instructors. She continues to train and teach Aikido and works as a palliative care physician on Long Island with a background in pulmonary and critical care. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that great introduction. I don't know if I took a Kemi from everyone.
Everyone.
Anyway, I think it's great for us all to be here together. And, you know, COVID is on everyone's mind, and we're all here to see how we can move forward. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm happy to be part of this with everyone.
Okay, great. So let's just start off, and maybe Gina Sensei, you can go first. So again, I'm planning to open my dojo next week. Am I an idiot? Am I a nut? Is nobody going to show up?
I
Please.
think fewer people than you think might show up. I think it depends, you know, the cleanliness has to be routine, and a lot of people have put forward their plan for cleaning the dojo and hand washing and etiquette and distance and all that. I think hand-to-hand practice is pretty much not a good idea for the foreseeable future. But outdoor practice is great, and indoors maybe with weapons work or Kemi practice, but definitely with distance and a lot of hygiene.
So maybe we'll go to Josephine. She's actually had this experience. You opened last week, correct?
Yes, we opened this past Monday, and it was actually a really difficult decision to open because I personally didn't think it was safe. The problem was that we had a lot of students who were like, oh, then they'll just go out and, you know, like do their own thing with like people. And we were like, okay, well, then that's the choice between us opening safely with protocols in place, forcing them to follow those protocols versus them going to each other's houses, doing God knows what, and having absolutely no idea what they're doing. So that was what I actually wrestled with. I didn't really want to open because for us, like for me, I could sustain dojo for however long. It doesn't really matter because the building is the building. But it became an issue of students just being like, we're just gonna YOLO it and like whatever. And we're like, oh, okay, well, if they're gonna do that, then I'd rather have them be safe than not. So that was kind of what we grappled with. I think it's crazy personally, but this was how we came to the decision to open.
And maybe Deena. Deena is also a dojo cho of San Diego Aikikai, Chiba Shihan's former dojo, current dojo that he passed away. So Deena, tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about in terms of reopening.
Well, strangely enough, I mean, most of you are from the East Coast and I'm from the exact opposite side of the country. And we've been hit a lot less with COVID patients, although that doesn't feel like that in my hospital. We do have a very steady high number of cases in our intensive care unit, which is where I am mostly in the emergency department due to my background. But maybe because we're looking at the East Coast, the history of what's happened on the East Coast, which is not even really historical at this point. It was, you know, just a few weeks ago. People in San Diego County, at least, are still very wary of making physical contact with people outside of their home. And you may or may not know that our governor, Newsom, actually just mandated mask wearing outside for the entire state, and he was leaving that up to individual counties and cities, and he decided against that, and just, I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday, because we've had a spike in cases throughout the state. San Diego County has actually paused its reopening plans as of Thursday due to a spate of outbreaks in the community. And so definitely we're seeing our numbers going up throughout the county, and the hospitals that I work at in the South Bay, which are very close to the border, are seeing the most cases throughout San Diego County. So for me, it's kind of I'd love my dojo to get open. I miss my community. I miss the physical practice and how that gives me a really nice work-life balance. But I will probably be the very last person who teaches a class at my dojo because I'm going in and out of COVID rooms with the most critically ill patients that we have. And so it's not going to be me. Having said that, we're looking at doing some outdoor classes. I actually have a meeting next Sunday with my teachers to discuss our schedule of online classes and the schedule for those, the format of those, and then what kind of either indoor or outdoor classes we want to add going into July. And of course, every single day things change, and we might be back to we're not going to see each other again for another month because things change so rapidly, as you all know.
Okay, and Marta, what is the situation in your area, and have you resumed teaching Aikido?
Yeah, so for our dojo in Nashville, we're the metropolitan area around Nashville, the mayor has declared different phases of reopening of the city. And because of a sort of still slow but steady rise in cases, we've delayed going from level 2 to level 3. And it was level 3 at which the dojo as a whole, Tamamori Sensei, but talking to our instructors and talking to our students, made the decision that if the city moved forward to level 3 reopening, then we would reopen, but only with outdoor classes. Currently, we're doing classes a couple of times a week on Zoom. But, I'm just very concerned about indoor classes. And when you look at, lack of good airflow and people breathing very deeply and being close to one another. And, some dojos are very large, but our dojo is a small space. If we space people 6 feet apart, I think we could probably have 2 pairs work. So you start to have problems along those lines as well. So if we make it to phase 3, then we'll reopen outside.
All right, and along those lines, as a teacher or dojo-cho, what requirements need to be met before you reopen, before you think about reopening? So maybe Gina, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think as everyone has said, it's a very fluid, rapidly changing situation, and everyone's got to be open for that. It can't just be that we're tired of being home and we need, it's got to be a very reasoned and practical, well thought out decision. However, even moving from phase to phase, as we're doing here in Long Island, you always have to be ready to take a step back. And personally, as people begin to open up their households, they have to, again, keep a constant awareness of who they're seeing, when they're seeing them, so that if anything happens, there is contact tracing, which is going to be very, very important going forward. So it's going to be very, very slow. And, getting people to come and keeping everyone safe is a big, big task.
Yeah, okay, so Deena, what's your feeling about that?
Sorry, Liese, I was so involved in what Gina was saying. I forgot what the question was. Say it again.
Question: What criteria do you think need to be met before you feel good about reopening fully?
Well, I think our county actually has a really good set of criteria, and again, they've paused them. So there need to be either a declining or no new outbreaks for a set amount of time. And unfortunately we haven't seen that. And actually I believe that we've moved to reopening too quickly. I think gyms with a lot of restriction, of course, were allowed to reopen the 12th of June. And I didn't agree with that decision, to be honest. I definitely think people need to get back to work, but I felt like our numbers really weren't declining; they were only stable. And that's I'm sorry, I guess I should say of hospitalizations, our numbers were stable. Our ICU admissions were relatively stable at that time, although they're climbing back up in this last week. And so we weren't in a declining phase. and our case numbers are obviously still going up. So, you know, I think we do need to look at, you know, what kind of testing you have in your area for dojos that are in areas that are not on the coast that are heavily impacted, but maybe you have a small number of cases in your community. You have to look at what the what your county's doing, obviously. And then I think that probably most importantly is you have to get a sense from your community, your dojo community, to think of what things are actually that they think are safe. So that's what I've been doing, is reaching out to my dojo community quite a bit to find what things they think need to be in place. And then we have a dialogue about it, whether or not that's reasonable, that we can afford it, whatever it might be. And so I think it's both sort of this global macro, like, you know, what's the county saying, what's the state saying, and then what is your community saying? So I think we need to also be responsive to our communities and what they think is important. But like Josephine's students, I wouldn't just say, hey, I think she was really smart, by the way, to say, okay, let's get them in the dojo if they're going to meet anyway, and try to put in some safety protocols for them. So
Yeah,
good going.
Yeah, in the Northeast, where Josephine and myself and a few other people are, we do have declining cases for a long period of time now. So Josephine, if you can tell me a little, your criteria was that students were meeting anyway, correct?
So my criteria for opening, I had like a phase reopening thing that I'd like typed out. You saw it was like something like phase 1 was just, there's currently the COVID's just spreading, it's, you know, rising, so it's all online stuff. Then my second phase was if there's a decline within the last month, or it was like some weird timeline that I based it off of, like the BJJ crowd, Dr. Chris Moriarty. He had done one where he outlined like kind of like what the hospitalizations and ICU stuff should, you know, like what those timelines are. So I based one off of that. So we were pushed to reopen because our students were like, we're just gonna do whatever. But according to the phases that we had set out, we were allowed to enter phase 2. So for our own dojo, like this is not based on county, this is not based on anyone else's dojo. I have outlined like a really detailed phase opening for dojos, especially Aikido. And it was for us, for phase 2, it's like, you know, masked solo weapons, and we have like a video walkthrough on all the protocols. And, you know, no touching masks. Masks suck, by the way, to like practicing masks. It really does. However, I was told by somebody else that Under Armour is coming out with like this antimicrobial breathable mask. Might help. I don't know. That really sucked. But it's kind of to protect each other. So we were like, okay, so these are our phases. This is what we need to do in order to, I guess, be as protected as we could with the current risk level that we have. So, you know, and then I don't think we're going to move to like our dojo's phase 4, which is hand to hand, regardless, like within the next year or whatever. But it will probably be some combination of solo weapons work, solo chemi work, and paired weapons work, but with masks on and with social distancing in place. Like we drew out lines with painter's tape on the mats and stuff. So, and everybody only cleans their own space. So we're trying to make it as, like, obviously our students would not have followed this on their own at home. You know, we have a temperature gun. We gun them, not gun them. We shoot the temp thing at them when they walk in, you know, and we're kind of like on top of it. So, and we also have a new COVID waiver form that they have to agree to before they're allowed to practice. And if they break any of like these responsibility, whatever on the COVID waiver, it's done on Google Sheets. We reserve the right to be like, you can't practice right now. Like that's just it. Because I'm not willing to risk, you know, everybody's health for Aikido. Like that's just, I'm not. Some people might be, you know, I'm not okay with that. So that's what we are.
And Marta, do you have any personal criteria that you're thinking of in terms of reopening beyond the governmental guidelines?
Yeah, so I think for us, I mean, a lot of our students, we have about a 50-50 mix of younger and older students. And our two dojo chos are well within the range of high risk. And so when you look at our dojo, we have to really think carefully about caring for all of our members, right? We also have healthcare workers, we have teachers, so we have people who may be exposed more and bring it into the dojo. And I know this is kind of a radical thought, but honestly, I don't think that we're going to return to full activity until such time as there's a vaccine and we can really know that we're caring for all of our members. Certainly, Tom and Mary Sensei aren't going to be able to come back to the dojo until that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe continuing with you, Marta, you know, as a student, what could you do? I mean, say you're a student, you just can't stand being off the mat anymore, you just want to come into the dojo. How can you make yourself safer? I mean, we've talked about mask wearing. A lot of people don't like wearing masks, but are there any other measures you can take as a student to enhance your safety?
And so I think that's kind of the rub, right? So we know that 40 to 50% of people who are carrying the virus are asymptomatic, and it's great to check temperatures as you walk in the door. And we definitely, if you're opening, you should be doing that. And you absolutely have to educate people about symptoms and tell people if they're symptomatic, they must stay at home. And there's a whole panoply of symptoms, right? So it's not just fever, and it's not just cough, and it's not just shortness of breath. But there are those weird symptoms like the loss of taste and smell, people having diarrhea. I mean, so sure, all those people need to stay home, but it's very troublesome that, 40 to 50% of people aren't going to show any of those symptoms. And so how do you keep people who could transmit the virus out of the dojo? I don't think you realistically can. And so I think, what we have done as a dojo is we've said to one another, what is our responsibility to our own training? Yes, but what is our responsibility to one another as members of a community? Okay. And we feel like as a community, because we've talked, and we feel like as a community, our responsibility really is to stay home. And when case rates start to drop, we'll go outside with masks and we'll stay more than 6 feet apart. But honestly, I mean, again, we've talked about it. We won't be able to return to full activity until such time as there's a safe and effective vaccine.
Any other of the panelists? Yeah, Gina, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're just basically the same person, like I said, Gina.
Except for you're younger.
I have less hair than you. Last time it was the opposite.
Well,
Last time I saw it was the opposite.
What I wanted to say, and I know everyone knows this, but when you wear a mask, you are protecting other people from you. But, if you come in contact with someone who's not wearing a mask, you're not protected. I mean, you're to a certain percentage you are, but, so in opening the dojos, really everyone is going to have to be meticulous, not only about wearing their own mask, but about where they've been and staying away from people who are not wearing masks, because all of those things, can bring someone into the dojo who can infect other people. And I can say, and I'm sure Deena can back this up, wearing a mask all day at work is a torture. You're dripping. I mean, it's a torture, but you get used to it because this is what we have to do. And really, this is something that everyone has to just realize. A mask protects other people from you, but you're not protected if you come across someone who's not wearing a mask. And people think hospital workers are maybe the most dangerous, but in fact, we are going into the COVID positive rooms, but we've got a lot of protection on. The person that you see in the supermarket maybe is at a higher risk than one of your healthcare workers, so you just don't know. And that's why we have to be super, super, super cautious.
Go ahead, Deena. Yeah.
Well, I was just, I saw just, I'm kind of glancing at some of the comments going by, scrolling, and, Mallory, like she always does, came up with a sort of a bigger picture question, which was like, ethically, how do we open? Like ethically, morally, how do we reopen? How do we feel like that's what we should be doing, not just for our own dojo community, but for the community at large? I mean, again, you might have some people who are carriers, asymptomatic carriers, and they can train together. That's great, awesome. They're training. There's energy in your dojo, and you feel like you're getting back to your life. But at what risk to the greater community? And I think, Gina, and I'm sure all of you read the news. You've seen what COVID does to people. I mean, in person, it is a horrific disease and a horrific dying and death. And I don't wish that death on anybody. And so, like, morally for myself, as much as I want to get back to my life and having the outlet of Aikido in my life, my spiritual practice, my physical practice, morally and ethically, I'm not there yet. And again, and I don't think most of my community is. The community that I have in the dojo, some of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And, and Lisa, you were there at one point, so that even includes you, although you are a bit crazy. But yeah, I think, we take this seriously and we want to protect each other. And I would hope that, Aikido is, it's time to Tenkan. It's not time to Arimi, is how I feel. We got to let this situation be as it is and be protective of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment that there's a lot of great information being put out on the chat. We'll be saving that and sending it on to anyone who's interested, offering a link to it. But there's a lot of great resources that people are posting. So on protective measures and things like that. So I guess I'll just open this up to the panel. I mean, what are your feelings about the future of Aikido at this point? I mean, will Aikido have to change? How can we keep our community together in this time?
I think that for the foreseeable future, Aikido has changed and does have to change, but there's some part of Aikido that has to do with your personal development and training, and that is something that we can use and bring out into the world. I can say that in the hospital every day, Aikido is a vital part of just getting through the day. That, as we develop our own sense of center and peacefulness and ability to, harmonize with the world, then we can send that energy out and help other people. So it's right now, I think the focus, and it's not a bad thing that instead of, throwing each other around, and, we're practicing on an internal practice that is very, very valuable.
Any other panel members want to comment on the future? What will Aikido look like? Go ahead, Josephine.
So one of the things is, no matter what we do, we have to have a plan, right? Like, I obsessively write down plans. Like, that's literally my MO. And one of the things is, for example, we're having trouble with, like, say, growing dojos and stuff, but as we understand it, like, is it ethical to do that right now? So for us, I closed membership from outsiders. We are not currently allowing any new people to come in because, one, they don't know enough of our dojo protocols and how our dojo operates in order to properly, I guess, follow everything. Like, even now, like yesterday, I went to the first class that I had to sit in on, which was to kind of like make sure everybody was following what they're doing. And it was like, how to remind people, don't put on your gi on the edge of the mat, get into your space that we marked out for you specifically to put on, like, your gi jacket, if you even want to wear a gi jacket, like, it was just like, hey, we just gotta remember. And there were some things that I didn't personally even remember. So you know, like looking back, I'm like, oh geez, you know, how are we supposed to move forward with Aikido when one of the things that people have trouble with is making rent, you know, keeping their doors open. So for example, what I'm going to do, I haven't written this down yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to repurpose our introduction program into a sort of like in the future, maybe months from now, you know, like a opening new students in, because our introduction program is a closed program. Everybody starts at the same time. So what happens is I can onboard them quickly for the protocols that the dojo needs to operate in, hand them off to another instructor, new group, and these groups are not allowed to cross-train with each other. So for us, it was kind of a safety measure, because if one group gets infected, we just had to close that group down. We're like, okay, you guys isolate for 2 weeks, you guys get your, you know, dues, whatever, accredited, but we don't close the whole dojo down. So this way, it became like a better or easier way for us to figure out how to isolate groups that might have gotten infected and, you know, keep the dojo doors open. So that was what we did. Your mileage may vary. I like closing groups, and we had enough instructors to do so. And that was the thing, because if you don't have enough instructors, you can't do closed groups. Like, you can make them, you know, do study groups on their own, but you wouldn't be able to actually teach them anything. So then the other thought was this introduction group could also be an instructor training group. I can have a first kyu or a shodan instructor come in with me, while, you know, this way we're only training with that group. This instructor isn't, you know, like going into any of the other groups. And then once I'm handing this introduction, you know, group off, I peel off. So this instructor just takes over this group. And this way, everybody is kind of on board with everything. But that's far into the future. I can't even imagine doing that like prior to fall, you know, if even winter, you know, if a vaccine isn't out yet.
How about you, Marta? Do you have any ideas on what Aikido will look like in 6 months, a year? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so the winter worries me a lot, because that's probably when we're going to see another uptick. I mean, you know, you have critical care folks on this call who know a lot more about this than I do, but, you know, I think we're unfortunately expecting some perhaps collision of influenza and COVID that may be rather unfortunate. As far as our dojo is concerned, we have, you know, what we're doing is we're giving doing a Zoom class that is an introduction to Aikido. It's more talk than action, to be fair. We're doing about once a month and just trying to introduce people maybe to a little bit of the philosophical background of Aikido and some just early movement. It's a little hard across Zoom to teach weapons to new people, because a lot of times they don't have weapons, although, you know, a broomstick can serve as a jo or a bokken early on. And we're just trying to introduce them, again, kind of who we are. We think as a dojo, a lot of what we have to offer is who we are as a community. And so we want to help express that sense of not just Aikido as training, but Aikido as community. And then again, just some early forms of practice movement with the idea that this is to kind of whet the appetite and there's more to come, because there is another side to this, right? We will get through this and there will be a vaccine. And this will be something that we'll look back on and we'll remember, gosh, wasn't that crazy in the 2000s or in 2020 when we had that COVID thing, right? So there's another side, and we're going to get back to normal. And it's just a matter of adapting and overcoming to what is. I love that statement. It's time to Tenkan Nadarimi. Because Aikido does teach you how to deal with this, and we can't just like bullheadedly say, oh, well, it's just not there because I don't want it to be there anymore. I'm tired of it. We have to blend with it and adapt ourselves to what is the reality.
How has that online Zoom class gone, the introductory class? Has it been successful?
Well, we've only done it once. And unfortunately, we didn't do a real good job of marketing it. So we didn't have a great turnout for the first one, but we're very hopeful for this future. And that's kind of our tact and our strategy. And we'll see going forward how that goes for us.
Right, great. And I think we had one good question. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be on the front lines of this as an Aikido person? I mean, Gina Sensei mentioned she uses it in her workplace. Aikido, her Aikido centeredness. Can you just tell us a little bit about what your experience has been as professionals, medical professionals? So go ahead, Marta Sensei. Oh, Gina, you want to go first? Go ahead.
No, I'll go. Marta
Gina,
Sensei.
please, you are much more in the front lines than I.
Well, Deena and I have been talking recently, and both of us really have been through hell. It's really hard to believe, and I don't say that to be sensational. I say that so people really understand, because for a lot of people, if it hasn't touched you personally, you maybe don't understand, but it is devastated. And a very close friend of mine lost her child, 33-year-old, just married. I mean, when it touches you, then you get it, or when you see it, then you get it. And so using Aikido every day, it's helping just to get through the day of feeling that you can't help everyone, that you are communicating with families who can't see their loved one, and you are, families who are angry and they don't understand and they want to take that anger out on you. Patients who are terrified. It's really been something that in all my years in practice, I have never, ever experienced before. And I've seen a lot of death and dying. I've been in palliative care for quite a few years now, but this is really something extraordinary. And Aikido can certainly help deal with it from a personal perspective.
Deena, how about you? You've had a very difficult experience, correct?
Well, yeah, so, Gina actually saw a post that I put out on Facebook, I think, and reached out to me personally. And the post was from, I think, either New York Times or Washington Post, article about feeling very helpless as a frontline worker, and never having felt that helpless before. And of course, like I said, I mean, this is no exaggeration. Gina and I really are almost exactly the same person. Both of our, not only have we been doing Aikido for a long time, each of us, but she was a pulmonary critical care physician. I was a pulmonary critical care nurse. And then she went into palliative care, and that's exactly what I did. And so I would, we started talking, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to to Gina to have that weekly check-in that we do now, because it has been literally overwhelming, both physically and emotionally. And everything that Gina said is true about the disease itself being very devastating to people, and the impact on families and communities. And, I think one of the difficulties right now is that out in the larger community, not in the hospitals where we're still kind of in bunker mode, everybody's reopening, everybody's relaxing. And I can't tell you how angry that makes me, because I feel like this is never going to end for me personally, and for the people in the hospital. And so I'm trying to come at this with some compassion, and stay open-hearted and listen deeply to what others are saying out in the community. But honestly, it's very difficult, because it's literally day after day after day, every single day, another death and another death and another death. And so, yeah, I don't see an end in sight, and it's hard to keep, without Aikido in my life, it's actually really hard to keep a really good balance. Again, I don't have my spiritual physical practice, and I don't have my community with me. So, these people, this dojo community, they're my family. They are the people that I see, besides my coworkers and my colleagues at work. Those are my two main life spheres, right? The dojo and the hospital. And so I'm missing that balance, and I'm missing that community. So that's what it's like on the front lines. And yeah, it's rough. It's really rough.
All right, well, thanks for really bringing that out. I think it's important because I do think a lot of us have not had direct experience, and it's sort of become this abstract idea. And you're right, we're letting our emotions of being sick of it maybe overcome our common sense, speaking for myself. So, Jamie, do you want to open it up to other questions? We're almost out of time. Does anyone else have anything else to add before we wrap up the formal portion of the panel?
I do. So one of the things that I wanted to say was that I think it's really important to know where all of your instructors are as far as like their headspace goes, you know, and that's part of what the waiver does. So I highly recommend having a COVID waiver because it assigns responsibility to what people should do. You know, we've had people be like, oh, it's just the flu. I'm just like, you know, I get that we're reopening, but if you think that you can just relax and do whatever you want simply for that, like that's not going to happen. And I'm going to have a problem with it if you're not going to be safe. You know, we've had some instructors be like, oh, I don't know if this is necessary. I'm like, you know what? You might not think it's necessary, but I'm not taking that chance. We're already saying that we have a certain risk appetite that we are willing to do in order to reopen. But if you want to kind of like mess this up for everybody, then we're just not going to reopen. And then what's going to happen? Like the dojo closes down, you know, it's not going to be here in however long if you guys want to do it that way, you know. And so it was a little bit like hedging a bit of a threat, but I was just like, I can't have instructors and I can't have students who don't take this seriously, because I think people who are taking this risk should be the ones who take this the most seriously, like as far as all the protocols go. So I highly recommend keeping in high contact with students about what the expectations are.
I want Josephine to write all of my reopening stuff and marketing plans. Can you do that for me? Because I'm busy.
I mean, you can totally like,
So
I have everything on Dojo Show, including like the introductory programs, including the, like all of my emails, I literally showed how I templated it, what marketing words I'm using, everything is on there. So if you guys really need it, and you know, 2020 was supposed to be my year. You know, like in a month and a half, I got 10 new monthly paying members, like by following this, like what I developed. And it was gonna be run every quarter. I was gonna get 40, 50 new students a year. And then COVID, I was like, oh, mother, we're in the worst timeline. Like this is the worst timeline.
I want Josephine to organize my life. I want to wake up to her and have her tell me what to do.
My husband might disagree with you. Because he doesn't think, because he's like, oh, she controls my life, like, you know, to the T. And I'm like, this is what I do.
And obviously you do it well.
I'll turn things over to Jamie. Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. I think, Josephine, you're really expressing what many Dojo Cho are feeling. Like, God, I was doing well and I was expanding, and now what? Yeah, so thank you for that. Mallory Sensei, I wanted to ask you if you would share a little bit about your thinking and what you've been doing in relation to COVID and ethically and all.
Oh, yikes. Well, thanks for putting me on the spot. I also just noticed the chat. We have an expert epidemiologist, Amy Weiner, who's at our dojo, and she just joined as well. So Amy, if you wanted to jump in too. We're being very conservative. I have to say, I really do appreciate hearing directly from Gina and Deena, just to make it real. Like, I think if you have not experienced a direct experience of people dying from COVID or the effects of it, it's hard to take seriously because we all are so desperate to want to get back and to train. But our dojo is choosing to sit the pandemic out and to be very conscientious about it. we're thinking of it as a rising phoenix plan, where we're saying we expect there to be, you know, another hit in the fall, and we don't want to open up and then have to close again. So we are very definitively saying we're going to certainly do virtual. We're going to keep our membership going, virtual training outdoors, but not go back to the kind of training that we all love, which is the hand-to-hand training, you know, without encumbrances, without masks, without any of that. But we cannot do that until there's a vaccine. So that is going to be our option.
Agreed.
So Amy, are you unmuted?
My background is I'm actually a vaccinologist, virologist, drug discovery, my whole professional career. I actually worked in the lab with SARS-1. So I don't have the medical experience that our panelists have, and I very much appreciate them sharing their thoughts and experiences with us. I think everything that I've heard so far from the panelists was right on right, very, very well said. The only thing that maybe I would add is to try to be maybe it's a little academic, but there is a value called the R naught value, which has gotten a lot of press, and that might be included in some of the guidelines around reopening. The R naught talks about the transmission rate of the virus from one person to another. And if it's low enough, then one could be fairly confident that the virus will not spread. We're nowhere near the R naught, at least in the areas where they are calculating R naughts, which is a lot of the country, I think including California, certainly Washington State. So that might, as a suggestion as to one of the criteria, might be around what the R naught values are, even though in some ways they're a bit subjective. It's maybe the most quantitative way that I can think of to measure the current status of the pandemic.
We've been we've been finding in the hospital that people can remain positive. Some of the patients who had the most mild symptoms seem to remain positive the longest, like up to 6 weeks, I think is our max. Some of the people who have been the sickest and who have managed to survive actually test negative in terms of the virus, you know, sometimes within 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. But that doesn't say anything about the infectivity of the virus that remains. And there's so much unknown out there that it just seems, you know, that we need to do a lot more work before we really know where we stand and how to protect ourselves. Does that make sense?
I had I had a good conversation with a dojo cho, and this is kind of off topic, but I think it's within the scope of this panel discussion about this former dojo cho has moved dojos multiple times, have picked up and moved across the country. So has had a lot of experience opening and closing dojos over the years. And his advice to me was to not hold on to physical space if we needed to close, and that Aikido would always be there. The community may continue and go forward and continue to exist in some form. Go practice outside, go practice at a park, do Zoom meetings, whatever. But I think, you know, for those of us who are running dojos, based on the feeling a lot of us have that we'll have a resurgence with the flu, influenza, and COVID together in the fall. You know, some of us might be existing right now relatively well, managing to pay our rent at our dojos or our mortgage payments if we actually own our dojo space. But I tell you, I'm personally preparing emotionally for the thought that I may need to let this physical space that is my dojo go at some point, because Aikido is a physical, intimate a physically intimate martial art, and that's partially what draws people to it, I think, is that we have this physical connection to each other that is intimate in a way that it doesn't exist in a lot of other martial arts, because it's not competitive. And so, and COVID is stopping us from doing that. And I think this is a really different, I mean, this, you know, I know we're basically out of time, but I think, you know, doing in person or even Zoom classes, it doesn't, I think we're all just trying to hold on to this relationship that we have with each other through Zoom or, but it's difficult, I think. You know, I really don't know where this is going to go in 3 to 6 months, whether or not, you know, San Diego Aikikai in its current location is going to continue to exist, because at some point, you know, I think that we're going to have to make a really tough decision. And I don't know if other people are doing that, but again, ethically, I want to keep people safe. Ethically, I don't want to take people's money and not provide them a place to train in. So I think it's difficult. I'm looking at, I like that Gina's right in front of me. So you're the main screen.
I am. That happened to me when I was talking.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm someone else.
But I just wanted to bring that up because I think we haven't talked about that in this panel. Like, what happens? Do we need to let go? When do we need to let go of our dojos at some point and come back in a different, come back later when things are safer, when we have a vaccine? And thank you for all your hard work on coming up with a vaccine for this, because I think that is going to be, that's going to be what we need to move on. And I know that I have some students who work at Salk, and so they, you know, people are really busting their butts to get a vaccine. It's incredible the work you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say I really, really agree with figuring out what your hard line is about closing. You know, I keep pestering my husband. I'm like, what is our hard line? What is our hard line? At what point do we sit back and we say, you know what, it doesn't make sense financially? Because I don't know how many of you know, but like in New York, the Attorney General sent out a warning to gyms: you can't collect dues while you're not actually teaching anybody, because that's theft of services, you know. And so I really pestered him. I was like, you know, we could transform, you know, for us it's easier because the building is the building. I could transform it into whatever, it's a mixed use. But like, at what point does it not make sense to continue running a dojo and maybe leaving it to the next generation to possibly revitalize it? Because you know, I mean, as much as vaccines might, you know, work, we don't know, you know, like that's really the thing. We don't really know. So I'm praying it does, but I'm just not certain. So everybody should have like an exit plan or exit strategy. And that should include, if you have a lease or whatever, that should include how you're going to talk to your landlord or how you're going to negotiate with them, because some of these commercial leases are like 5 years long. So you never know.
Hi, Mallory.
Hi, I'm Nilu. I'm the executive director of Birankai North America. I'm wondering if there's any conversations like this, cross-organizational, whatever, where all Aikido people are having this discussion of how are they making that choice for their dojos? What factors are going into that, whether they close or open? Is that conversation happening anywhere right now?
It is happening right now.
Yeah, but I want to continue this because we're in a continual, you know, not just monthly, but weekly. Are we going to open? Okay, I'm away 2 weeks. Okay, next month, who's going to pay dues? I mean, these are ongoing things. I don't see an end in sight. You know, this is going to continue. I would love for, someone to like,
so
I want this conversation to continue would be just wonderful.
So I also run the Aikido Dojo Network Discord server. It's a chat server specifically for Aikido dojos to talk. Like, we have even like a dojo toolbox. It's like Slack. you know, for a while, it was just a place to hang out. But we also put a lot of any resources that we find, we just start blasting it out within. We have like 130 something members right now. If you guys are interested, it's on Dojo's show. Like there's a link to it somewhere on that website. So if that was what you guys wanted to talk about, including like reopening stuff, I'm always on there. I run several different servers, so I'm literally always on there. So if you can't find me via Messenger, a lot of people realize, oh, you can ping me on Discord, and I'm pretty much available.
So. I'm just going to jump in here just because I'm aware of time, and just want to thank everybody so much. And to this point, we will take this and think about an action item. Maybe we can convene or with the Aikido instructors group or something where this is a bit USA centric, and this is an issue for people all over the world. So maybe we'll look at convening a conversation like this online, because clearly there's so much more to say. But I just want to thank everybody so much for your incredible input. And, I always say I'm not a conservative person, my politics, my being, but boy, when it comes to COVID, definitely conservative. And I want to appreciate our panelists so much for bringing out the need to be so cautious and to think and to operate that way. So this conversation clearly has just been so rich and needs to continue. So thank you so very much. And also that, this is a time to take a big pause. We are having to kind of regroup, regroup, step back as dojos, and to see what is not only our current, but our future with Aikido. And in this pause, how can we be creative? How can we serve our dojos and our, our students, our membership, our colleagues, and use this opportunity, and also to see, where are we going with Aikido, so that when we come back physically, we can come back in new ways. How can we be applying our Aikido in the world, in our worlds, our personal worlds, in the world? So, we say crisis has the two sides of it, crisis and opportunity. Let's not forget the opportunity parts, as we are so very careful with ourselves and with one another. So thank you so much. I hate to close this, but we need to right now so that we can get on with our training. Let's give all of our panelists just so much appreciation for all that you've shared with us.